The brain is a very important organ to the body and lets us do everything we do every day. The cerebral cortex is where most of the thinking happens, and lots of different actions happen between the firing of different neurons in the brain. The cerebral cortex is made up of white matter and gray matter.
Well, I'm Charles Jennings. I'm the Director of Neurotechnology at the McGovern Institute for Brain Research at MIT. We learn through experience, and experience comes to us through our senses, the eyes, the ears, mostly, and the experiences change our brains. And one of the biggest questions in neuroscience is, how does experience change the brain?
The primitive brain is all the organs in between the cerebral hemispheres. This contains the thalamus, hypothalamus, midbrain, pituitary gland, pons, medulla, and cerebellum. The thalamus is the control center of the brain and monitors everything that goes in and out. The cerebellum is the spell check of the motor cortex and makes sure all movements aren't jerky. Neurons are the wires of the brain. They send electrical messages and cause chemical reactions. The axon is a stem off the cell body that sends messages. Dendrites also send messages, but to closer neurons. The myelin around the axon allows faster messaging. The electrical message releases a neurotransmitter at the nerve ending. The electrical message is sent by releasing and inserting different ions that are either potassium or sodium.
So this is the right hemisphere of your brain. It's all inflated. So the gray here is the sulci all inflated out rather than folded in. So it looks like this when they're all folded in. And then we inflate your brain out so that we can see in all the sulci. So the blue here is where all the activation is for objects, which this is, visual cortex, some temporal, and some frontal. But if we look in the ventral part of the brain, so the bottom part, this is within the fusiform gyres here. This red spot is where you have activity greater for faces than objects. And this is called the fusiform face area. And it's an area specific to face processing. So anytime you're shown.
Sight is a very important part of being a human and allows us to see our environment around us. The light goes through the cornea, gel, and the lens, where it was reflected upside down and backwards onto the retina, which contains photoreceptors that respond to light. These photoreceptors fire messages into optic nerves that send the messages to the optical and visual cortexes of the brain to be fused together. There are receptors in the skin that feel the world around you. There are different types of receptors for different aspects of the world, like pain, heat, pressure, vibration, and texture. These receptors send messages back through sensory neurons to the primary sensory cortex of the cerebrum. Ventricles are spaces in between the cerebral hemispheres and make cerebrospinal fluid for cushioning the brain in the skull and to deliver nutrients to different cells around the brain. Without the brain, most of modern society and science would not exist, because the brain has thought up all the ideas that these aspects are based off of.